Okay. All right. So let's continue. So now we've got our data set. So you can pull in your, we saved it, right? So you can pull in your ERSA data set so that we can start using it, right? So if you just say use, pull it in, and we can start now doing the fun stuff. So I've noticed with my students that I supervise, the part they hate the most is cleaning the data. And it seems to take forever because they'll send me their data file. I'll say, no, fix this. You need to find more data and all of that. And they are just, it's a nightmare for them. But once we now start doing the data analysis, then people get excited because they're like, wow, okay, is this what the data is telling me, and all of that. So for me, this is always the fun part, trying to disprove or support your argument, because we go in to the empirical data analysis with our preconceived assumption that, okay, this is what I'm going to find. I'm going to find that institutions are positively associated with economic growth. You start running your regressions and you keep getting a negative coefficient. And then now you start panicking. You're like, what is wrong? Is it something wrong with the data? No, this is where it's interesting. So your argument or your hypothesis is clearly, it's being disproven, or it's being disproven by your analysis. So now you actually have to try and explain it. Or sometimes you get a null result where there's no association. And sometimes a null result, especially if your data, there's nothing wrong with your data, it is a result. And you have to explain why is it that you're not picking up any association. This is when you start really thinking about the sample you're using, the data you're using, the methodology you're using. And if you try different things with your data, maybe using different proxies, or maybe you use a different methodology, you're still coming up with the same thing, then you start thinking about, okay, these countries that I'm looking at, what is the context? What is happening in these countries? Is it that this association that I was expecting doesn't work because of A plus B plus C? So you're now literally talking about the economic, social, and political issues within that country that could be driving your results, right? So for now, have we brought in our data set? Okay, so we want to create our ID. I called it ISON, you can call it ID. So we just want to associate our country with an ID number, like I said before. So this is World Bank data, and we've also brought in our globalization. We've merged in our globalization index, right? So the nice thing is that in World Bank, you've got these regions and these income levels. So if I go to the data browser, you'll see that each country has been allocated to their region. South Asia, Latin America, Europe, and Central Asia. So this is nice. This is nice because you already have the regions. You don't have to create the regions yourself. If it didn't have the regions, you would have to create the regions. You would just generate a region variable, and then you start replacing the country and grouping the countries under each region, right? So for us, we've already got the region and the region name, but it's not in a, it's in a what is it? A string variable, not, it's not a coded. So you want to, if you want, you can generate the region code. And so you are just, again, putting an ID to the region. So it will be EAS is East Asia. Let me tab the region name so that I know what I'm calling these. I'm calling them the right name. Okay, here we go. So EAS is East Asia and Pacific. Then you've got Europe and Central Asia, Latin America and Caribbean. So here's the problem with World Bank. they mix Middle East and North Africa, right? And then you've got North America, you've got South Asia, you've got Sub-Saharan Africa. So if you want to do an analysis on the whole of Africa, you literally have to create an African region. And you can simply do that by, I think I might have put a few codes here. Yeah, here. So if you want to create, no, that's not the one. So if let's say you want to create Africa region, so we can just say generate Africa equals dot. You don't need to do this. Then you would simply replace, copy. Then you would replace the name, you've called it Africa equals 1 if ISO 3 equals Angola, right? And then you'd carry on doing that. Replace Africa equals 1 if ISO 3 equals, and you pull all your African countries. And then you now have your region called Africa with North, South, Central, and East. So that's how you would do it. If you wanted to do that, if you wanted to split those regions, right? That World Bank. And I think it's silly. I don't know why they do that a lot. So anyway, in the end, you know, because you're thinking, oh, going through all of that, I will just motivate for why I'm using Sub-Saharan Africa. I'm using Sub-Saharan Africa because the institutions in Sub-Saharan Africa are more common than the ones, are more unified, you know, similar than the ones in North Africa, right? So you motivate. But you can actually pull in your North African countries to create Africa. And in some data sets, they have combined North Africa with Sub-Saharan Africa, right? So in this one, we are using Sub-Saharan Africa. So we don't include North Africa and Middle East. So you would just generate your code and you are assigning a code to those particular regions. You can then use it when you're doing your analysis, when you are running your regressions, when you're doing your time series and you want to compare your time series across regions. And I'll show you, we are going to get that to that now. So yes.
With the data we seem to have now, we don't have anything like regions.
Didn't you keep region name when you?
No, we are using group.
Yes.
Yes.
You didn't just see, because we kept, there must have been a step that you left. Use the Stata practical do file, and then we created an ERSA data where we globalization. No. We're using the we're using the ERSA data.
Or you answer to take the globalization we are managing.
Yes, I think you missed that because you weren't here. So that's what we first did. But that practical has got everything. If you just run the practical, it will bring everything.
I'm following you, but you know, I'm doing my own.
I know. All right. So so Mzu will help you then. Okay, so we can create our region code, right? Sometimes maybe you want to combine. So maybe you don't like the fact that South Asia has been separated from East Asia, and you just want a region that says Asia. So you just combine them, right? You can just combine them and say, okay, you create a new region and create your region that you want. So you'll see here, I combined Sub-Saharan Africa with Middle East and North Africa. I combined East Asia with South Asia. I combined, so what I wanted were just America, Asia, Africa, and Europe. So that's what I did. Europe was already there, but they had separated East Asia and South Asia. I wanted to bring them together. They separated North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. I put them together, even though it comes with the Middle East, but it's fine. There are not that many Middle East African countries. So we can just, I'm just going to lump them there. And I wanted my Americas, to be together. So I just joined them. So that's the command. If you want to combine two regions or two countries or whatever you want to do, that means and. So you're saying you're generating your new region, your new category of region, and then you're going to replace that new category of region with one if the old region was that. Then you're going to replace another region which you're going to classify as two if the region was these two. If region was Sub-Saharan Africa and region was Middle East and North Africa. And then you create your third one as well, where you combine if the old region was East Asia and if the old region was South Asia, please replace them with this, right? So if you look in your browse and you go all the way to the end, you will see these variables have been created in columns, and then we can always use them in the data set, right? So this is just for your knowledge, right? When you're doing analysis, sometimes you want to do regional analysis. That's how you create your regions, if they are not already in the data set. If they are there, then good for you, you don't have to do it. But it doesn't mean that you can't do more with your data. So this is just me showing you that you can do a lot with your data, right? We also had income classifications, right? So we've got income levels, and you'll see again, I didn't like this because you know what happens is I find I don't have a lot of countries in maybe upper middle, in high income, or maybe upper middle, or maybe low income, right? Or maybe for my analysis, I just want to differentiate between high income and low income. So I can create my own income classification by combining high and upper middle, and then I can combine low and lower middle. And then you have your own classification of income label that you can use in your analysis, or you can use the one that has been given in the data set if it has the classification already. So this is just how you can create these differences in the data, right? And then this will come in handy for you tomorrow. So I didn't do all of the countries, but I was just creating a region within Sub-Saharan Africa, right? So that's what I was doing. This we don't have. This the data set doesn't have. The data set that we have has only split by Sub-Saharan Africa, Europe. It's a global data set, right? But now I'm saying, no, but I only want to look at Sub-Saharan Africa. And within Sub-Saharan Africa, I also want to do with a regional comparison, group the African countries that are in West Africa, group the African countries that are there. So you'll see I made a note to myself. I want to create African regions where 1 is equal to Central, 2 is equal to East, 3 is equal to West, 4 is equal to South. And if I had North, 5 would be North, right? So I'm going to generate a new variable that's going to pick up, that is going to create these African regions. And then again, I'm simply replacing, right? I'm replacing 1. So all my countries that fall under Central will be identified by ID reg equals 1. All my countries that fall under East Africa will be identified by ID reg equals 2, and so on and so forth, right? So I just did that. I created that, but it's not all your countries. You can finish that so that you can use it tomorrow as well, because it's always nice when you're talking about Sub-Saharan Africa to look at comparisons across the regions, right? We don't need to include the north because the north is not there. But if you wanted, you can include North African countries. 5, eh? That's Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso is not in North Africa, eh? I think Algeria is DZA, if I'm not mistaken. So you can see I said continue grouping countries in respective regions. Interestingly, if you look at African Union classification of African regions, it's slightly different to the regional classifications of African countries that the World Bank uses. So again, when you write up your data set, you have to say which classification are you using? Is it the AU one or the, yeah, because a reviewer can already say, well, why did you put, I know in I think it's in World Bank, Zimbabwe is sometimes put in East and not South, right? But in AU, Zimbabwe is put in South. So you have to say that I'm using this classification, and that protects you from those kind of comments, right? Because it's a reputable institution, you know, so you're using their data set, and that's how they classified the countries, right? And then once you have created your regions, in case you want to then remember them, you can just, you know, name them if you want, right? It's not necessary. They're not a lot of regions. It's only 5, so you should know that one is south and all of that when you're using your analysis. But, you know, if you want, you can name your regions so that it will, when you are now labeling your variables, you will have your central, east, north, south, west, exact, all of that. All right. So we won't be using regional analysis today, so you don't have to worry about that. So you can practice that when you get home to just get used to it. So now we want to prepare our data to start doing analysis. The first thing you need to do is to tell Stata that you are using a panel data. So you have to XT set your data by the ID and the year. And this is where creating your ID is important, because you can't say, I'll show you what it will tell you, what it will tell me if I say XT set ISO 3 year. String variables are not allowed in a var list, right? So that's why we created an ID, because Stata doesn't recognize a string variable as a variable you can use in analysis. So if we then XT set by our year, our country or ID and our year, there we go. Stata tells you, okay, fine, you've got a panel data, which is relatively strongly balanced. Sometimes it will, if it's not balanced, it will tell you it's an unbalanced panel data. That's fine. Time variable is going from 1970 to 2020. So we are good to go with our analysis. So we can all put that now so that you can see the lovely analysis that will come out from just this small data set we have together. Sorry, can you see the XT set? There we go. Okay. So the first thing we want to do, which I should have put here, but I put at the end, is you want to summarize your data to see how it looks like, what is the average, you know, is there heterogeneity in your data set? So there is the command. Let me see if I can pull it out. Do I have it here? Yes, here it is. This data set. Oh my God. This is in your do file, so you don't need to stress about it. Control C, Control V, right? So remember, we created these variables. We also created what? We created investment GDP, we've got pop growth, we've got trade. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. And then now we've merged in globalization, so we've also got globalization. So this is just simply showing you a summary of the data that you want to use in your analysis. There's the name of the data. This is the number of observations that your data set has, and you can see that you are dropping quite a lot here. It means there you've got a number of countries that were not recording gross fixed capital formation in some years. It could be during years of conflict where this becomes a problem, right? But otherwise, you know, most of them are kind of 7, 8. So it's not too much of a problem. This is the average. So remember, this is a global set. This is the average of the world. GDP, income per capita in the world, is 10,243 in US dollars. This is the standard deviation. You've got a country that has reported. Can you see the heterogeneity, the inequality between countries? So already you can start telling your story as to why this is important. Because just by looking at my data, there's a country that reported an average income per capita of 138 US, while there was one that was reporting 111,657. So this is nice. This is what you want in panel data, heterogeneity, because you can start telling your story. Similarly, globalization, you've got some that are relatively close. This would be your North Korea probably, if you looked in your data set to see which country has recorded this. And this is your highly open countries, globalization. Investment as well, you can see some have very low capital investment in physical capital. Others are investing. It's a share of GDP, a share of the country's GDP. Your population growth rate, remember I said there are some countries that are actually negative growth rate, and then you've got some that have high growth rates, right? And this is your trade as a percentage of GDP. So it's just, you're just getting a feel of the data you want to use, and you have to explain this data in your descriptive stats when you're writing your research, right? So there it is. What else did I want to do here? There was something else I wanted to do. Now I can't remember. Okay, so let's just carry on. So that's summarizing your data. Yes.
I just want to understand, why is it saying that the data is strongly balanced, and yet, like, if I heard you right, like, data for investment is not available for some other countries.
Sorry, what did you say?
I'm saying when we're doing the explicit command, it gives us that the data is strongly balanced, but it shows there's gaps in
Yes,
data. So
yes.
why, like, in other words, how do they determine that this data is balanced? Like, was there a zero or?
Not at all. I think our data was balanced because our years were matching, right? So if we hadn't dropped the year in the World Bank, it might have then said unbalanced data set, because you'd have a lot of variables from the globalization that didn't have data between 1960 and 1969.
Based on the year and not on the variable.
Yes.
Oh, because it's year and in the command says also year.
In that case, can you still, when it's unbalanced?
Yes, you can stop.
Yeah, you can. But ideally, you'd prefer to have a strongly balanced one. But yeah, you can. You can. And most of the times, you know, the data is unbalanced. Yeah. But you can still, you know, we are not claiming causation when we run our regressions. We just want to see the associations and the correlations. So you can use the data just to, and sometimes you just want to use it to get graphic visualizations, right? Okay. Oh, I remembered what I wanted to do.
Yes.
So, if you were reviewing a paper and one says I've used an unbalanced panel, because my understanding is a balanced panel will have more efficiency in the estimation.
Yeah.
Probably will trust the results.
It's better than unbalanced. Yes, that's true.
So would you penalize the?
Probably. which is why a lot of people don't tell. They won't say in the paper that it's an unbalanced panel.
So I think now I know what to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to show you that why we were creating the regions. That's what I wanted to show you. So here, let's say you want to compare, because remember, this is your global statistics, and you want to compare where Africa is in relation to that, right? So this is where you can put your constraints that summarize those same variables, but if your reg code equals, and this is why we need to know why the reg, what is sub-Saharan Africa? Guys, where did we do our regions? Yeah. So sub-Saharan Africa is 7. Okay, there we go. 7. So can you see that is now stats that are only for sub-Saharan Africa. You see, and you can see your observations. They are only for sub-Saharan African countries, so they are less than the global country. And then you can also, explain what's happening in sub-Saharan Africa. So you can do that if you want to compare. You can then show for your different regions if you're doing regional analysis. Are we okay with this one? Oh, sorry, this one. Yeah. So it is not, I did not put this one in the do file, so you can copy and put it in your do file and then make a note to yourself if you want to look at a particular region. You need to put that constraint. There was another hand. There was a hand? No? Okay, we are good. Yes. Mzu? Where's Mzu? Oh, he's gone. Oh, you're helping. All right, are we okay? Can we continue? Okay. So we've done that. Where are we? All right. You can generate. Okay, the other thing that we pick up. Oh, yes, the other thing. The other thing we pick up by looking at our descriptive stats is that we've got these large numbers and yet we've got these small numbers, which means when we use these variables together, especially in estimations, the coefficients might explode or they might be really, really tiny. So that's why we will log the variables that have large that have these large numbers, right? Because we want to then use them in conjunction with our other variables. So that's why we then create logs. Again, you're just generating. That's generate, gen, and then you just name it, what you want to name it. Is it log, GDP, or L, GDP, cap? You name it whatever you want. I take the natural logs of the RGDPPC. Voila. Right? You can do the same thing with invest equals LN investment GDP. Right? If we had taken population size, we know population size goes into the millions, you definitely have to log it. But we took population growth, so we don't have to log population growth. It's already a percentage in percentage form. Globalization, it's an index. We don't necessarily have to log it, right? So yeah, so that's generating logs. That's how you do it. Anything complicated? No. Is data scary? No. So I put this command. So if you want to generate a lag of your variable, you can generate it like that, or you can just use it in your estimation as L dot. L dot the variable, or L2 dot the variable, that means you're lagging it by 2 years. L3 dot the variable, that means you're lagging it by 4 years. So you don't have to generate lag GDP. And so if I wanted to generate here lag GDP cap by 2 to show that it's 2 years lagged, then I would have to say underscore n minus 2, right? And then do the same with 3. But luckily in Stata, if you just enter it as an L dot LGDP cap, it recognizes that as a lag of that variable. If you put L2, it recognizes that as lagged by 2 years. So we will be using that in our regressions when we get there. And I think that's about it that you need to know about generating lags. Then, didn't I put my creating dummies? Where did I do my dummies? So I didn't put my dummies, right? So maybe, let's say maybe you had we don't have that in here. So maybe you had a category written, you had a column where you had identified the British colonies, the French colonies, the Portuguese colonies, right? So you named this column colonial, right? And it's got British, French, right? And it's in your Stata. We know it's a string variable, and Stata won't identify it. But anyway, you're not interested in all the colonies. All you're interested in is seeing how do the other colonies react in relation to British colonies. So you just want to create a dummy variable where it's British colonies versus other colonies, right? So in that instance, you would just generate, let's say, we can even say British, right? Let's just say British equals dot. So we've generated British equals dot, right? If you go to your data set, you will see that all those variables that we'll be creating, they come here. So here's Britain. So now it's waiting. That column is waiting for you to fill it in. So that's where those commands replace, right? So now you want to replace British equals 1 if colonial equals, let's say you had named all of them UK, the ones that are British, colonies. That would be your command. I don't have it, so obviously if I say enter, what is it going to say? It will tell me that that dummy variable doesn't exist because it's not there in the data set. I'm just showing you how to create a dummy variable. So let's assume that it would have created. If you went to your column, you'd see that all the countries that you identified as UK, colonized by UK, they will now have a 1. The others would still have dots. So then you'd say British equals 0. If colonial equals, then maybe you'd say France. Let's say France. And then you've got that. And colonial equals Portugal, right? And because these are your other colonies that you want to compare with British colonies, etc., right? Colonial equals Spain. And then you'd create that. Then you'd have a dummy variable that is 1 is equal to British, 0 is equal to other colonies. That's how you'd explain it in your data description, right? So, yeah. I didn't include this colonial dummy, but it's very easy. So you can literally copy, you can copy that command and put it in there. And if you want, if you are looking at just sub-Saharan African country, you can put it in Excel and put your colonial dummy variable there. All right. And then that's it. Yeah, that's it. That's creating variables. Oh, and I've got it here actually, so you don't need to. It's in the slides. I put the command in the slides. Yeah, excellent. Good. We've done that. Okay, so now we're going to graphs. We're going to graphs. Okay. So how do you produce time series graphs in Stata? Yes, the command is there in the do file here. You first, if you are coding it, you first have to create the average of that variable, right? So I'll show you what I mean. If I just say TS line RGD PPC, it comes out like that. So I need to create an average of all the countries between 1970 and 2020 to see the trend of GDP per capita over time globally. So that's why we first have to create the mean. So that's the command to create the mean. But in Stata, you can also just go to your graphics, and can you see all your graphics? You even have time series graphs. It's got your line plots. You can create, you want a line, it's telling you which variable. Let's look for our RGDPPC there. And then if you accept, no, it came out, sorry. Why did it? Oh, I was meant to create the mean. Yay. Disable that one. Let's see, create line properties. Area Skype. I think you then still need to, you actually still need to, I never use this, I just created. So I think you still need to create the mean and then use it. Okay, so let's first create the mean before we can use that. So just use, run these variables, well, no, libdim won't be there. Yeah. So run up to globalization. So we've created the means, right? And then now if you just TSL MGDP cap, there you go. You've got your nice variable. So you do need to create the mean. So even if you're using it straight from Stata, yeah. Graphics, where is our TS time series graph, our line? Let's disable that. Let's create, then you want your MGDP cap that we created. Hopefully it will now work. There we go. Yeah. There's your first graph, your time series. And here's the nice thing. You can code it. So again, if you like coding, you will have the instructions to change color and all of that. If you're like me, I learned by just saying, okay, I want to edit. I don't like the way this looks. I went to graph editor. Graph editor. If you open that, I can now make changes. So I can change that. If I'm not happy with that, I can click here and say text box and say I want to call it mean GDP per capita so that the reader knows what it is. There we go. And then, I want to make this line darker. So, where is it? Line properties. If you right click on your line properties, you know what? I like purple and I want that to be thicker. Okay, voila. You see, I don't like this blue here. It makes it so obvious. I use Stata and everybody uses Stata. So let me go to graph properties and I can change that to white. And hopefully, voila. Is it? There you go. That's that. And then once you're happy with your graph, you then stop the graph editor. It's going to tell you to save it. And then you can save your graph. Right? And that will be your graph. So I won't save it. That's your graph. And then you can copy and paste it into your report or your research paper. There, right? But you'll find that somebody knows how to code all of that so that the graph comes out like that. Yeah, exactly. And it's there. If you go into the Stata code book, you'll get all of that information. If you go onto YouTube, you'll get all of that information, right? I'm just very old. I'm pedantic in my ways, so I kind of stick to my. Once I find something that works for me, I stick to it. Which might be a weakness, a flaw in my character, but I still get the work done, right? It takes me longer, so someone who can code it can do it in like less than 5 minutes. Me, it will take me maybe 20-30 minutes to sort it out, but we eventually get to the same final outcome. So I'm okay with the way I do it. So you can learn, this is just me showing you how I do it. But, if you're a good coder, then the resources are there. A lot of resources. Yes, Ponsi.
The challenge with studying in college is that you learn a code. For instance, I learned R, then I got it. And then you come here and things mean different things. The exact same thing you use, but now here in something different.
Totally different.
They gives you. So that's what's discouraging. So if you learn a code, you then have to stick to that software and code only there. Otherwise, I don't know if you can learn codes for all of these and have them new.
Yeah. So that's kind of my problem, right? Is that R is clearly a cheaper option because it's freely available online, but that it means I have to learn how to use R, and my mind is it's resisting that new technology, right? And it's not that I can't learn it. I know I can. If I put aside, an hour a day, like what we're doing today, once you're just comfortable with just the basics, the rest is really up to you to keep practicing, right? But just getting started and understanding and all the errors that you'll get before you finally. So yeah, but eventually I'll have to learn R. So yeah, so I just need to change my mindset. All right, so if you want to do regional comparisons, so this is what I was saying, why we needed our code or the regions the way they are. You can use this command. So if you create, so these were the commands I was using to create the time series that we discussed over the past 2-3 days, right? So if you just run this the way it is, so I created the mean GDP of East Asia, the mean GDP of Europe, etc., etc. But I was putting this constraint. Can you see this constraint here? To show them that create mean GDP only for that region, right? And then once I've created them, and so you can call this is the name I decided to call it to remind me that this is for East Asia. You could call that mean East Asia, or you can generate and call that name whatever you want, right? Just use something that will remind you what you're doing. So if we run that, and then we run our TSL line, so now you're just pulling in all those mean GDP per capita of the different regions that you created, including the world one. If we run that, voila, then you've got your comparison, right? And again, you can make that pretty. You don't like the way this is named here. So where do you go? Graph editor. And then to make it easier for people to know what that is, I can say, okay, that was world, So again, it takes me a while. That's Europe. I can do the same thing, etc. Naming it whatever, for easy identification. If I wanted to change, maybe make world which is this one darker, so we can see the average where the countries are. Again, line properties, make it thick. I can make it thick so that we can pick it up. There it is. You can also change if you want to. Maybe you think, why are they all lines? It's difficult. So I want to make that a dash. You can go to line properties. It's dark orange. It's solid. You can come here. You can see I've got dash and you've got a dashed line. So all of that you can do in editor. Here, it doesn't have an axis. Look at that. And we know that reviewers are so fussy when you don't label your axes. So you just highlight that, you go to axis properties, you look at title, and then you put your title. Mean GDP per capita. Voila, there it is. Right? Once you're happy with the look of your graph, again, you stop the graph editor, it will ask you to save, you save it. So you're happy now with your graph. So that's how you do time series graphs. And I just want to show you as well, Stata has got so many ways that you can present your data. I see you've got bar charts, you can do correlations, pie charts. So we're just going to do a bar chart, we're going to do a pie chart, and then we'll do correlations, and then the rest is for you to play around and with the data that you have. So that was time series, right? Time series graphs. If you want to do, where are my bars? Here we go. Okay. So maybe you want to see how globalization is performing across countries that are high income versus low income. So you can go to graphs, you can say bar charts, you can choose your variable here. So let's say globalization, right? If I just do it like this, it's going to give me one big blob like that. That means nothing, right? So that's a waste of time to anybody. So what we can do is we can go back. We've got our mean, but you want to see it according to categories, right? So here you can click one and you'll say, okay, I want to see it according to income level. And then voila, there you go. So it's showing you that in your high income countries, globalization tends to also be higher. In your low income countries, they are not as open. This is what it's telling you. So you can do your analysis according to those categories, which is why it's nice when you create those regions, especially with sub-Saharan Africa. When you've created the regions, you can then see, right? So even here, what I can do is I can do it by regions. So if I go to graphs here, mean globalization, go to categories, I can remove this group one and put, what was it, region. Do we want region? Yeah, region. And that's by region. So here's sub-Saharan Africa, here's South Asia, North America, Middle East and North Africa, Latin America. So you can see the differences. So the descriptive stats start selling your story, right? Whatever you're trying to argue, this is where you really, try and sell your story. That, this is why it's interesting for us to look at it. Look at the differences across regions globally, or look at the differences across regions within Africa. And a lot of the times, the literature just puts Africa together in one group without looking at regional disparities, because maybe West Africa, which is prone to instability, these growth factors are going to have a different effect on economic growth compared to regions where they don't have a lot of instability. Maybe in East Africa, they've got a lot of investments happening, so we'll see different effects of globalization in East Africa versus West Africa, South or North. So this is where you're telling your story. So the descriptive stats are very important in when you're writing your paper. And then already you see, as I was creating those graphs, they are the codes. So you can always copy these codes into your do file, or you can create the bar charts the way I showed you. You can also have two categories together. So you want to see your globalization over income level over regions, right? And obviously the interpretation then becomes more, but okay, let's try. So that's mean globalization. We want to do it over income level, I think was first, and then region, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. So graph, bar chart, region, let's see. So basically what this is telling you, and you can clean this. I'll show you how to clean one. So this is showing you okay, let me go to Sub-Saharan Africa because they've got all 4 bars. This is Sub-Saharan Africa, and it's showing you that within Sub-Saharan Africa, the countries that have high income have higher globalization. The countries that have low income have less globalization within that region. So you can also say that within this region, there's also disparities in terms of income per capita, and you find that, within this region, those countries that are wealthier, the growth effects are more impactful or effective. To clean this up again, me and my slowness and everything, I figured out, because the first time I did this, I was like, oh, that's a mess. How am I going to sort this out? And then I figured, okay, I can do it like this. Let's see if I can remember. Yes. So custom style is black, and then I put it at an angle, 45 degrees. You see. So it starts, my tick label, custom style, 45 degrees. But you can see how long it's going to take me, right? So sometimes when I'm doing this kind of analysis, I'm sitting in front of the TV, watching Come Dine With Me with a glass of wine, and then I do my work like this. So it can take me, like, I'll be sitting there and I'll be doing my analysis. It takes me like 3 hours, but at the end of the day, I've got, right? So I would carry on doing that. You can see it's starting to look better. I think it's still too big, so maybe you can also change the size, right? So I wasn't changing the size. Medium, small, I can make it, yeah. You show me. Which one? Yes. This one. This one. Mm-hmm. This one. Mm-hmm. You see now. You see. And then the size I can put, let's say, small, to see if that's better. Oh my God, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Okay, I need to put that down. Okay, so tick on red box. Okay, I'll do it again, Theo. So here, and then it's label properties, and then small, and then 45 degree, and then that's it. And then okay, wow. Abigail, well done. Now I can do this in like I can do this in 3 seconds. Well done. Now I've learned something new. I know, right? Now you see, you've combined your labor with the technology, and you're more efficient than us. We were. And then you can change to 45 degrees and size. Ha. Watch me now. Yes. I'm going to be, this is good. This is good. I love this. Okay, so there you go. You see? So this is what I was saying. This is why I like this, because everyone, this is the transfer of knowledge, guys. Transfer of knowledge and skills. Which means that I can do the same thing when I'm doing the okay, this is good. All right, so if you stop your graph editor, you can save it. Voila. Voila. Wow. I love it. Okay. So that's bar graphs, right? And then the last one I want to show is the pie. So you can do pie charts as well. Again, pie chart, what's your category value? Let's use region. Let's use RGD, PPC, and okay. And then you've got your pie chart. So let's learn this new thing again. I want to try it again. Okay, so if I just double click here, Abigail, I should be able to access all these. But what about, I want to access all these names to change them. So let's say I want to the EAS, and I want East Asia, but I want them all to come out so that I can change them at the same time. Is that possible? Okay, all right. But this is helpful because you see I've got everything here, region, inner region. Okay. Which one? Which one? Or should I double click again? Look, there's labels. There's labels, guys. But then the labels is just size though. Yeah. Oh, there's region. Yeah, it will just be size. Maybe titles. No. Okay, so the advanced. Okay, so we'll still have to learn that one, but yeah. But that other one was very helpful. That's amazing. Okay. Yeah, so you explore. Can you see? You explore. That's how I learned some of these things. And as you can see, I'm still learning. I'm not close to the frontier yet. So that little piece of information had significant returns for me, Abigail. In terms of my productivity. Okay, so that's your pie chart. And of course, with your pie chart as well, if you want to put, percentages inside, you can do all of that when you go into your graph editor. Yeah, so you can do all of that. You can change the color if you don't like it. You can do all sorts of things. So that's data for you. And those are graphs, and you can do other things. Then the last graph is our correlation graphs. Where are our correlation graphs? And then we'll end with regressions. Okay, here. So with my correlation graphs, I create so you'll see for the time series, I was creating the mean of the variable using the year to average by year. But here with my correlation graphs, because I want to see where the countries are in relation to each other, I recreate my mean, but I use the ISON now, right? So if you just run this code, you'll create the mean variables. And then if you just run this two-way scatter, hopefully it will create the graph, right? And this graph has got all your countries. If you don't want to use the country names and you want to use ISO code, you just go into the command where it says M label, and you can say ISO 3. And if I run it again, it should just produce the ISO 3s and not the country name. So it's up to you how you want to present your data. And that's it. Right? Oh, and then in this one I did do a bit more coding. So you can remove the legend. You know, sometimes when you've run your correlation, it will put that legend where it says this is the fitted line, the dots are the IDs or the country names. So you can remove that already. And then I can already put my title for the y-axis and title for the x-axis, which is why when I ran it, I was getting this nice, pretty little graph like that, instead of doing my usual graph editor and adding the titles there. So you can already code it into your regression line. Yeah. And voila. That is your correlation. So all of these are in the Stata practical do file. So you can use all these codes and anything else for your report, right, tomorrow. I think it's almost a break. So we can either take the break or I can continue and then just finish and then we'll be done. Yes. Renaming all the 6 regions at this, yes, at once. Yes, that's what, because what in the graph editor you'd have to click on each one, name it, say okay, go to the next one. So I thought maybe there's a shorter way of doing that, but you can definitely code it. You can code it. Yes, you can. Yeah, because you can code it. Yeah. That one we couldn't find it, but you can definitely code it. You can, where you tell Stata that change this name to be this. Actually, what you would have done, I'm being silly. What you'd have done is right before you'd have already created the variable. So you say label var this and what the name is. Yes, before generating the graph. So you'd have already assigned a label to East Asia to that, so that when it does generate the graph, it's already like that. Yeah. So you can do that. The GitHub. Yeah. I think you'll also find that. Yeah, you will. Yes. Yes. Oh, yeah. A lot. Yeah. So you'll find many do files available, and even some of the empirical papers, like I said, transparency is becoming important. Some of them will have their repository on GitHub and they'll put the data and the do file, and how, so that you can reproduce the same analysis and the same results that they have. Shall we take a break and then come back at, what is it? Is it at 3:30? Yeah. Then the last hour should be enough for us to finish what is left. This is more tiring than what we were doing, right? Over the past because this is using a lot of the brain matter, the obdula oblongata. So I just want to see this one. Is he labeling? Label. The problem with these things is you start with practicals. You always start keeping up. At some point you fall behind, and then you're like, you know what, let me just listen, and then I'll try this when I get home because I'm really struggling. I always do that. I'll start up like, yeah, I'm keeping up. Then something happens and there's a red something and I can't quite figure it out, and then now I'm trying to fix this and listen. So in the end I'm like, you know what, it's fine, let me just listen, take notes where I need to take notes, and then I'm going to try and, practice at home. Yeah. So, yeah. Practicals are always fun. Abigail, you mentioned the you are the one who told me about the Afrobarometer. Was it not? Who told me about Afrobarometer in Ghana? Yeah. That they are running an Afrobarometer workshop using the Afrobarometer dataset. You must put it. Yeah, please send it in the group, because Eleni then also sent it to our PhD student because she's using Afrobarometer. But then you have to go to Ghana though. So if I had money in my publications fund, I would send myself for the training, but I'm poor, so. And unfortunately, they're not doing it as an online. Hey, I think you have to go to Ghana. Yeah. Who? Okay. Yeah, okay. All right, so you'll see that I've already put it in there, right? Your assignment for tomorrow. And it's not complicated. They are the instructions. So the only thing is probably merging in the VDEM dataset. So, Mzu and I will be there to help with that. But it should still follow the same process as what we did today. And then creating your regions. The code is already there, so it's just for you guys to finish that. And then after that, you can run with the data, right? Oh, and also it's pulling out the variables that you want from World Bank. Because remember, today we only pulled out 5. They've got inflation, they've got government debt, they've got all sorts of other variables. They've got life expectancy, they've got infant mortality, they've got various measures of development outcomes. So you guys have to decide, how do you want to tell your narrative about Africa's development path? Once you know how you want to tell your narrative, that will then guide which variables you want. So if there are particular variables from World Bank if there are particular measures that you want to pull out of World Bank and you're not sure of, that's why I'm there tomorrow. You can just say, okay, this is what I want to capture, which is the naming convention, and we'll find it, and then you can rename and you'll have your variable there with you. Yeah, so that's it. So that's what we'll be doing tomorrow. That's why we've got the venue, and you can work at your own pace. You can also work usually with empirical analysis when you're doing this. It's always nice. Okay, it's always nice to work with somebody, and then once you've got your results and everything, then you can separate and write your papers as well. So you can also work together. Yes, Lon. Yeah, so that's the data set we're merging in tomorrow. Yes, I've already put it in the DUFA. I've already put it in the folder. So it's the VDEM. It's varieties of democracy. Yeah, so that's going to pull in the institutional variables. And then, yeah, so I think the VDEM that I put in the folder, I've already just isolated 3 or 4 variables. So you don't need to do a lot of cleaning. You can just merge it in the way it is. The only thing you have to be cognizant of is to make sure you've got the ISO codes match. The ISO codes match. So yeah, to avoid time, in the varieties of democracy, it's more about democratic institutions. In the World Bank, yes, the world governance indicators are there. So there's control of corruption. If you want to use a measure of corruption in your analysis, there is control of corruption. We just need to identify how it's named in World Bank, and then you can keep it and use it. Pardon? Okay, so let's complete today. So let's, the final thing is running regressions, obviously, in Stata. So we've generated our logs, you've done your descriptive analysis. Now you just want to run an estimation to support the story or narrative that you're telling about Africa, or whichever country or countries or municipalities that you're looking at, right? And we've already run this XT. I think we did run it. I'll just run it again, but I'm sure we ran it. Yes. Okay. So you can run a simple OLS regression model, which is reg. Reg means regress. And the first variable is always your dependent variable. So you're saying regress this variable on these factors. And then you want robust, you can just add robust, for your standard errors, so that you have robust standard errors. So if you just run that is just pooled OLS. And you can see the association between globalization and income per capita is positive. Your p-value is at a 1% statistically significant. So, if you went in with an argument that globalization is not conducive for growth, while your data would be telling you something else, right? If you went in with the argument that being open is conducive for increasing income per capita, while your data is supporting your hypothesis, right? So, and then obviously, you then have to explain the mechanisms of how is it that in your sample of countries, globalization is positively associated with income per capita. Is it through the trade of goods and services, or is it a different aspect of globalization that is driving this positive relationship? This positive correlation? It's up to you. But the one thing is that we only ran a pooled OLS. And we are running a pooled OLS for a country or for a group of countries that are not similar in characteristics. So remember what we spoke about, our convergence, that we've got conditional convergence among countries with similar steady state properties. These countries are being merged with rich countries, developed countries, and poor countries. So we need to tell Stata that no, please account for country differences. These are your fixed effects. This is what your fixed effects are doing. You are accounting for differences across the countries or across your sample of your sample of observations, right? So that is an XT reg. And then afterwards you say comma, FE means fixed effects, and then you just have your robust standard errors, right? So I will run this last one where I was looking at, so that would be my, let's assume this is my full model where I'm looking at the determinants of of income per capita in a global setting. On average, how do these factors affect income per capita? And then I've told Stata, please make sure that you allow for the fact that there are differences across these countries. And when I run that, you get your, holding everything else constant. This is how globalization affects GDP per capita. Holding everything else constant, this is how investment affects GDP per capita. And you can see that some of them are statistically significant. Population growth is not statistically significant. And then, so typically, you would have explained your mechanism of population growth. You can talk about it, but a lot of the times, there was the one time I think when I sent my paper and I would discuss as well the ones that were not statistically significant. The reviewer said, "Why are you bothering? There's no there's no result. It's not statistically significant. So don't." So it will just depend. Some reviewers want to know why you're not getting a result there because there might be a story, and others, they don't really care. So it just depends on the luck of the draw, really, on who's reviewing your paper, right? So this is a fixed effects regression, right? And you can play around. If you've got more variables, you can play around with it. Obviously, this is a very simplistic model of income per capita. We know that there are a whole lot of factors that affect it, but we can't include everything, which is why when you do write your equation, you've got that error term at the end, because the error term is meant to absorb all other factors that we are not observing in this particular model. And if you just Google fixed effects, you'll get the story behind why you run fixed effects as well. And in Stata as well, help fixed effects, it will come out as well. Or help, it would be help, I think it would be help xtreg actually. Ew, I did that. It will be help xtreg, and it will show you all the different ways you can run a fixed effects model and what each one is doing. You see, and you've got random effects. Sometimes, you'll get where they say, well, how do you know you're meant to be using a fixed effects and not a random effects? You can check that. There is a test that you can run so that you can check whether you should be running a fixed effects or a random effects. You can use that in your write-up. You can use that in your paper to prove to the reviewer that indeed, I checked this and it said I should use a fixed effects model, so I'm using a fixed effects model. And very rarely, when you're using panel data with so many different countries, will you find that test telling you to use a random effects. It's quite rare. Most of the times, you are using a fixed effects model. And then, if you want to include your year as well, so the fixed effects typically runs for your country differences. And then if you also want to include your year differences, you can include, so you will have a fixed and time effects model. So that's why I said country and time effects. So your country effects are accounting for the fact that United States is different to South Africa. There are characteristics in the United States that are not similar to South Africa. Time effects is accounting for the fact that, well, maybe United States got its independence in this year, in 1800, whereas South Africa got its independence in 1993. The United States changed this policy at such a time, or there was a change in the regime, during the 2000s. In South Africa, there hasn't been any change in the regime. So it's accounting for these changes, these time-sensitive changes, events. Yes, yeah. So, again, if you just want to run that, so you will have your year effects there coming in. And then you've got your variables, right? Coming in again. And then you would just interpret. And when you're interpreting your coefficients, it's not a question. So you've got your statistical interpretation, but we are also very much interested in the economic interpretation. And the economic interpretation is explaining why Why are you getting a positive on that particular coefficient? Why are you getting a negative on that particular coefficient? And this is where your theories then come into play as well, because then you can say, well, actually, this is in line with the theory from so-and-so, or this theory on Kuznets, that if you have, if your income continues growing, you are going to have this nonlinear effect taking place on whether it's pollution or whichever variable you are using, right? So those are the economic interpretations that that then make your story, that sell your story, that makes your narrative interesting as well. Don't just tell me that, well, globalization increases is positively associated with income per capita. Yeah, I can see that. Why? That's what I want to know, why. If you want to include lags, this is what I was showing you. It's very easy. You just say L dot your variables, and you can also include the lag of your dependent variable, right? To show the persistence or the dynamic characteristic of your model, the persistence of income per capita. The assumption is that if your economy was growing last year, it should be growing this year. This will have spilled over and it should be growing this year. So the lag of GDP should have a positive association with this year's GDP. So if we just run that, and then we will also observe that, yes, you'll see that your GDP per capita, and you can see how high that is. It's almost close to 1, right? So it's a very large coefficient, and that's usually the case when you include the lag of the dependent. The lag of the dependent does tend to then explain a significant variation of within your model. And then everything else, you can see that. Usually adding the lags is not going to change your initial story when you were using current contemporaneous years. The which one? Yes. So I did talk about that. You can do pre-estimation tests on your data. Like I was saying, you can test whether you should be using a fixed effects or not a random effects. You can test the unit root of your data. These are all there if you click here, statistics, you get all the tests on panel data, on your time series. You can run all the tests that you want here. And it's a long list. It goes all the way, you see? So you can run all those tests, pre-estimation tests, and you can even do post-estimation tests as well. So after you've run your models, you can do post-estimation tests on your data, your model. So yeah, you're quite right. They are pre-estimation. I just jumped that, yeah. But again, it's for you guys to explore Stata, right? And learn all this stuff. Okay. You can also run system GMM. So that's the command to run system GMM. You probably will have to install it. If you try running Extabond 2 and it gives you a red, it means it doesn't have it in Stata 19. So you'll have to do the SSC install Extabond 2, and then you'll be able to run your system GMM. You can read up on it and what the model is doing. It's literally just creating instrumental variables to make to run the model as well. So, and then you can also run, if you have a binary dependent, you can use logit or probit, and again, you can just run your logit on a dependent and your explanatory variables, and then with logit variables, you want to report the margins, the marginal effects, right? The marginal effects. So this is the command that you would run post running your logit regression, it will produce the marginal effects. Those are the ones that you report, right? And you are holding everything at the mean of the model. So, and all of these statistics, again, here you go. If you click here, statistics, you see, you've got binary outcomes, all the models you can use for binary outcomes. You've got ordinal outcomes. If you've got ordered categorical dependent variable, which goes from maybe from 1 to 3, so you have 1, 2, and 3, and it's ordered, you can run ordered logit. If you've got categorical outcomes, you can run multinomial variables. Everything is there in Stata. And once you know which estimator you want to use, help the estimator, you get the explanation, and then you can decide, is it suitable for what you are, for the model that you want to run, right? So even time series, they are all your gotch, your typical time series models that you'd run. And then you've also got your tests. They are your pre-estimation tests where you want to look at the unit root. You want to test your normality of the data, if it's normally distributed, all of that, you find it. If you're running duration models, where you want to see if a particular variable, how will it affect the duration of peace in a country or the duration of conflict in a country, you can use survival analysis. I have used it in one of the papers that I published, where I was looking at the survival of leaders in power, and I was looking at the determinants that are associated with how long a leader remains in power. So I used survival type analysis for that. So yeah. And then you've got structural equation modeling. One of my PhD students used this in her paper, when we're looking at social institutions, because we had to look at historical and current institutions, and the reviewer said, well, actually, you might have a structural equation model because your current institutions, your historical institutions are going to affect your current institutions. So I think this is how you should set it up. We had to do a lot of reading around that because we had never used it, but we ended up using it, and it was a perfect fit for that particular, the way we were telling our story, right? And it ended up getting published in the South African Journal of Economics. So it's nice, right? So it's really nice when you can use, I think, was it Abigail? Spatial? There you've got your spatial models as well. All of these models, it's nice when you can use these nice methodologies as well, because they, after running your fixed effects, you then do a more robust analysis of the data to tell your story, right? So it's nice if you can use some of these treatment effects when you're running difference in difference models. You can also do regression discontinuity. So Stata is very rich in what you can do with it. Play with it, get used to it, get accustomed to it. Don't be scared to use it, right? And any error code, you can find out what's wrong with it. And if you have someone who is good at Stata in your department or in your networks, use them to you and say, look, I'm running this, but this is what's happening. That's what I do. If I'm running a model, I'll go and my colleague will say, well, actually, given the structure of your data, you shouldn't be running it. You should be running something. You should be running a different type of model. Maybe you should be running quantile regressions, and Stata also can run quantile regressions as well. So there is a lot that you can do in Stata. Okay, so the last thing I just want to show you is how to produce the tables. So you are probably going to have to, and I put it here, I greened it out, but I think you probably will have to install these in your in your Stata 19. It might have it, it might not have, right? So let's say you want to run your descriptive tables and you want to produce the table. So if you put sdog in front and then your command sum, if you run it, it will produce your file. These are your descriptive stats. There, and then the nice thing is you can change, right? So you can say if you hadn't, let's say you forgot to already label the variable, to attach a label to the variable so that it comes out as GDP per capita. Well, it's nice. You can quickly do it here, GDP per capita, if you want, right? So that's the nice thing. So that's producing your descriptive stats. You can also do your correlation matrix. Again, PW core is a pairwise correlation of the variables that you're using in your data. If you run that, again, here it is. It's come out. There's your correlation and it's come out, right? So these commands are there in that do file. And then the final one I want to show you is when you're creating your tables. So with your tables, you'll put your first command, which is run GDP per capita and globalization. Under that, you'll give it this command. This command is saying produce a column with the coefficients of globalization. Add to that table that I'm using fixed effects, and then include the F stat and the decimal places of my coefficients. I want them to be 3. If you want them to be more, you put 5. If you want them to be less, you put less, right? So you can put those notes to yourself. Then you would put your second column in your do file, or when you're writing out your instructions, again under the second column. So you can see in the second column I've included the next explanatory variable, which is investments, and then I've got the same command, but look at the difference. The first column always has replace. After that, I want to append my columns. So if you have 5 columns in your table, your first one is going to be replace, the next ones are going to be append. When you want to run your second table, that first command has to be a replace. If you forget and you say append, you're going to have this massive table, and it will show you, you will immediately know where your mistake is. That, oh, I didn't change that first column, right? So it will not overwrite the previous columns that you've created. It will just keep appending because you've told it to append. But if you're telling it, this is the table, I've created this one, you save that table, now you're running table 2, your first command is going to be replace, right? So I'm just going to quickly run this like this so that I can show you how it will look like. And there, that's how your table will look like. Right? So all your coefficients are there. It's brought out your observations, your R squared. It's telling you the number of countries in your data set as you include each explanatory variable. And you can see that you start with 170 and some countries start dropping off. That's because they probably don't have data in education or in population growth, etc. You've got your country FE, so you're telling me that you ran fixed effects, because as a reviewer, I will look at your table. If I don't see country FE and you didn't mention it in your write-up, that's going to be my first question. You've got a panel of countries, different countries. Why are you not using a fixed effect model, right? And this is your F stat in the model, and it tells you that the brackets are your robust standard errors, and the stars, what they mean at 1%. If it's 2, it's at 5%. If it's 1, it's at 10%. There's your table. Right? Now I'm going to run a second one, and I didn't save this one. So I want to show you what will happen. when I try and run my second one. So let me go to this, then you can see what will happen. So now I'm trying to run my second table, right? It tells me this. Why? It's telling me while you're about to overwrite the previous table that you created. So it's telling you save that. If you don't want those results, just cancel, delete that table. So I will just remove the table like this. And then if I run it again, it will run. And then I can pull out, and you'll see this one I included year effects. So I also included the fact that I'm using year effects. The reason why it's nice to pull out your results like this is then you can compare, you can see if your result is consistent or your story is consistent based on the statistical significance of the variable. And you can see where you are losing significance as well. And that's, yeah. So that is doing output tables. And there are so many ways you can produce that, right? There are other commands that you can code in Stata like stab, and it will also produce the tables, right? So yeah, this is about it. I don't know if there's anything else. These were just sort of different estimators you can use. You can use pooled mean group, and that was the system GMM again as well. Yeah, with the outreg. So yeah, that's it. I hope whatever came out of this, there was a bit of, marginal returns to what you know about Stata, and you can, use it more frequently in your research and everything. Yeah. All right. So yeah, we're done. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to stick around, but we are together tomorrow and we'll work through together with the data analysis tomorrow. So that's why Mzu and I will be there, so that you can just ask us, okay, I want to do this. How can I do it if it's something that you can't figure out by yourself? Yeah. And I think we're at Grad Center 174. Okay, cool. Excellent. So I'm done with the workshop. Yeah. So thank you very much. I thoroughly enjoyed our debates and our discussions over the past 3 days. And I also, I always love having these sort of workshops because there's always a two-way. So I also learned a lot from what you guys were telling me, information that I wasn't aware of. So I was making my little notes as I was going, papers I need to read, books I need to read. So this has really been great for me. Thank you for improving and increasing my knowledge as well. Thank you very much. And I'll see you tomorrow.